Spencer Lee just lost in the biggest NCAA upset of all time. Yes, it is bigger than Dan Gable losing to Larry Owens. I'll explain my reasoning, but I'll talk about this match and all the craziness that surrounded it, but also all the other wacky things that happened in these semifinals. There's a reason this is the craziest round in all of college wrestling, the best night throughout the entire year. But let's stop stalling and get to Spencer Lee, because he lost to Matt Ramos of Purdue, and as this Flow Wrestling tweet says, he shocked the world. He pulled off the upset, not just of the weekend, but of the decade, no, of all of NCAA history. Like, this was insane of how much of an upset this was, and you are crazy if you say that you expected this to happen. There was nobody that expected this, maybe outside of the Purdue wrestling staff and Matt Ramos himself. That is how insane this was. Especially going for his 4th title, had the longest win streak in all of the NCAA. There's no way he was going to lose. And I'll share my emotions on this and some other stats related to Dan Gable and Larry Owens. But as far as like what happened in this match, how did Spencer Lee lose? How did the GOAT lose? Well, he started out in the first period. Matt Ramos actually got the head start on Spencer Lee. He earned a takedown, and then he earned some quick near fall points. So he was up on him. Then in the second period, which I was surprised that Ramos chose bottom, because, I mean, you know you're going to get beat by Spencer Lee on top. Well, Spencer Lee got right into it, tilted him up, earned some near fall points, got right back into the match, and the third period earned a takedown. But Ramos was able to earn a quick escape on him by the end, I think there was like a minute, 40 seconds left in the third period, and push Spencer Lee straight to his butt, straight from that escape, that Granby roll. And this is what happened here. This is where the craziness pursued, because Spencer Lee was like kind of locked up around his back. Well, Ramos just dropped straight to his back and took Spencer Lee to his, and there was no getting out of this. I was in utter disbelief. I said, I mean, there's no way Spencer can get out of this. And then you see time ticking down, and you're like, come on, Spencer, like, pull something out. Like, you can get out of this. You've been in these type of, like, maybe not in this exact position before, but man. And then he's getting choked out, and you're like, what is happening here? Is Spencer Lee actually going to lose? And as the time ticks down, he gets the fall. Matt Ramos stuck Spencer Lee. This was the greatest upset in all of NCAA history. And yes, I got into some like Twitter debates with some people because, oh, well, you don't forget about Dan Gable. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that Dan Gable was undefeated back in the day and that he wasn't able to get 4 national titles. But the facts are, Spencer Lee was going for his 4th. He was going to be the greatest Iowa Hawkeye in history. He was going to be one of the greatest NCAA wrestlers in history, going to become the 4th or the 5th or the 6th, 4-time national champion of all time. There was nobody that was beating him the way he was wrestling this season. And yet Matt Ramos came out. I mean, granted, it's not like Matt Ramos is some nobody. Like, he has had 35 wins this season, only a handful of losses. But he is just a sophomore, and, like, especially pinned him in January in the first period. There was no way that he was going to come out and beat Spencer Lee, let alone stick him. I mean, this match, and please, like, let me know what your reaction to this was, because mine, I freaked out. I mean, were you excited about this? Were you upset? I was sad, man. I was so sad that this happened. So first of all, let me say a couple things. One, congratulations and props to Matt Ramos for pulling off this upset. Absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely unreal. And I think that people are obviously focusing on Spencer Lee losing more than Matt Ramos winning. And that makes sense, right? Because of Spencer Lee's pedigree, because of his history. So props to Matt Ramos. But second of all, I wanted to see history be made. I wanted to see an Iowa Hawkeye 4-time champion. I wanted to see Spencer Lee, who I grew up with just a few years below me in Western Pennsylvania, and I wanted to see him pull off the impossible and win 4 national titles. And now we're not going to see it. And you can only imagine what's going through his head. I mean, like, this was his year to get it done. He was going to become a 4-timer with potentially Yanni with it. We'll see what he ends up pulling off. But now it's not going to happen. And then some of the craziness happened surrounding this, other than like, is this the greatest upset of all time? And please, if you disagree with me about Larry Owings, like, let me know, because I know I'm younger. I wasn't there for that. I get it, okay? But then the clips started going online about Spencer Lee's mom, and I'm not going to show the clip because I don't really feel comfortable doing that. I think it's kind of it's sad. It's like Spencer Lee's already dealing with this, and you know, I understand it makes for like good TV or whatever to have his mom out there who's upset. Obviously, she's heartbroken. Her son just lost. I mean, I can't even imagine what goes into that. Seeing her son lose in the semifinals when that has been his dream for years to win a team title with the Hawkeyes. Done. Got that done. Win 4 national titles as a Hawkeye, and he can't do that. I mean, the only thing he can do now is look for an Olympic gold medal, and I hope he comes back and like gets 3rd place. Yeah, it's okay. It's awesome, but it's like, you know, it is what it is, and it's just, you hate that he's dealing with that, but then now you got to deal with the backlash of like all these people commenting online about his mom being upset about it. I mean, like, how do you think your mom would react to that? It was, I almost cried. This was the craziest thing to ever happen in NCAA history, but it wasn't the only thing that happened. So let's move on to the rest of the brackets. So Pat Glory pulled off an impressive victory, and if you don't mind here, I'm going to pull up the brackets because, like, I'm just going to run and gun it here. Pat Glory won 8-2 in the semifinals against Liam Cronin. An impressive victory. And I will have my NCAA finals picks coming out with, within a couple hours just so you can see exactly who my thoughts are on who I think is going to win. But Pat Glory's been wrestling an impressive tournament. At 133 pounds, RBY. I've seen some comments like, RBY hasn't been wrestling his greatest. Something seems off about him. I don't think so, honestly. I mean, yeah, he pulled off this sudden victory win against Mikhail McGee. But honestly, a lot of times what you see with these guys who are going for multiple titles, like their first title is oftentimes a bit more exciting because they're really, they got that verve. They got that energy. They have that kick in them that they want to win a national title. But then once they kind of start getting in, honing in the details, they're like, they know it's their weight to lose and everybody else is coming for them. You see these closer matches. And I think that's kind of how RBY wrestles when it comes to the national tournament. I will say he's impressive on top. I mean, riding guys out, like, throughout these first couple rounds, riding them out with his skills on top, that's not something you see a lot. And I understand that it doesn't make for that much exciting wrestling a lot, but it is showing that he is in control. So he won 6-4 in sudden victory, and his semifinals will be against Vito Arujau, who pulled off a major decision against Dayton Fix. Bet you didn't see that coming either. Yeah, Vito, 11-3 over Fix, and it's another one that's heartbreaking for Fix because he's somebody who's like, oh, well, he's going to make the national finals again for the 4th year. It's like almost a foregone conclusion. I said, don't overlook Vito. And he ended up pulling off that major decision. He's definitely a threat for RBY. And I think he's going to be somebody who the neutral game is going to be impressive. We're going to see some exciting scrambles from their feet. And I think you can see some back and forth takedowns. I think it'll be more exciting than the Fix match against RBY last year. At 141, Real Woods beat Brock Hardy in a 11-1 major decision. And honestly, like, I don't know if you were the same way, but in 133 and 141, like, my mind was just like, I just lost focus. Like, after that Spencer Lee loss, I just didn't know how to react. Like, I was so sad, so disappointed, so upset. Didn't know how to handle things. That these next, like, 33, 41, even 49 were kind of a blur to me until I started getting back into focus. Like, okay, like, what is happening? Anyway, Real Woods with the major decision. He's been wrestling an impressive tournament. Probably been the best Iowa Hawkeye wrestler this round. I saw a stat, and I didn't get a chance to go through and double check, but I believe it's correct that Every Iowa Hawkeye, excluding Spencer, won this round. And while they've struggled a bit through some of the championship rounds, they actually had a really impressive round this time, were the Iowa Hawkeyes. You see the team score scrolling across the bottom. They're having a good tournament so far. Andrew Alvarez beat Bo Bartlett in the semifinals as well, to a 6-2 decision to go up against Real Woods. Nothing too crazy there. I think I'm impressed by Bo Bartlett by making the semifinals, and from dropping down from 149 last year, it's a great look for him. At 149 pounds is where we saw Yianni Diakomihalis. He had a close match against Shane Van Ness. I guess I can... At times it was close. Like in the second period, it looked like, wow, this could be kind of tight. I mean, even in the third period, you see here, Yianni just went up 4-3, and then he kind of turned it up a bit, ended up winning 8-3 was the final score of this bout. And you saw it in the interview, or maybe you didn't see. He said, like, I was just excited. I had to have some nuts. That's his famous catchphrase for whatever reason. Kind of weird, kind of funny, but you love to see it. And he will be going for his 4th title. I think this is the match that we're going to see the entire tournament ended on, is 149 pounds, and he'll be going up against Sammy Sasso. And Sasso has had a good tournament so far. He put off 2 major decisions and 2 decisions. I mean, that major decision over Kyle Parko in the semifinals was impressive, 14-2. Now, he has lost to Yianni twice. We'll see if he can pull off something any different here, or if it will end up being kind of more of the same. At 157, you had Austin O'Connor get a win over an undefeated Josh Humphreys. Nothing too wild there to go into a 4-3 decision, while Levi Haynes earned a 5-3 decision over Peyton Robb, who he just recently beat at the Big Ten Championships. And Robb, at this point, Robb had 2 tech falls in a decision coming into this match against Haynes. He tacked Garrett Model, he tacked Cardenas, and then he tacked Model, and he tacked Jared Hill. And then he beat Cardenas by a decision. But then he came up against Levi Haynes, who has been just on a tear this tournament, the number 2 seed, and ended up making the finals against Austin O'Connor. This is a matchup. I'll get more into it in my actual predictions, but wow, what a fun matchup that's going to be there at 157 with the young true freshman. At 165, David Carr in Quincy Monday. And what a match this was, switched up from the NWCA All-Star Classic, because at the All-Star Classic, I've been saying it for the last few videos, it's been so boring, that match, but I was excited by it. Monday brought some new energy from him, and I think it was probably from that weight gain from the beginning of the season to end to where we are now, and I think you kind of saw that. I like seeing the Monday and the Carr families on the camera. I think that was kind of cool, just showing the legacy of that. Well, Carr ended up winning 6-5 by decision on the opposite side of the bracket. He's going to go up against Keegan O'Toole, who pulled off a 6-0 decision against Kim Amin of Michigan. And Amin had an impressive tournament. I thought Hamidi was going to end up being the guy who came through that side of the bracket, the number 3 seed. But Amin ended up pulling off an upset against Patrick Kennedy, then Dean Hamidi, and then going up against Keegan O'Toole. And O'Toole was just a little bit too much for him. He beat him, ended up, and I think that'll be a good match in the finals. The 3rd time that they have wrestled this season. We'll see if O'Toole's ended up able to do anything else. I will also say, because I saw Justin Bash tweet this out, David Carr, not only, looking at this bracket, not only did he beat Quincy Monday, NCAA finals from last year in the semifinals, he beat Shane Griffith in the quarterfinals. And then if he beats Keegan O'Toole, last year's national champion in the finals, I think you have a real shot at giving David Carr the Hodge Trophy. It's probably not going to go to Spencer this year now. I don't know if it'll go to Yianni. I mean, he did have a loss. Are we going to give it to somebody else? And that moves us to 174 pounds, where we had 2 pretty good semifinals matches. Carter Sirachi kind of controlled Chris Foca, and on the bottom half, we saw Makai Lewis and Mikey Labriola, which went to the tiebreakers, where you saw it right there. Labriola earned that takedown in the tiebreakers, had the riding time advantage anyway, and I think that was this is a match that I called would happen, but I knew it was going to be tight. I mean, it went to the tiebreakers. Just as easily, any other day of the week, you could see Makai Lewis making this. This will be a Big Ten Big Ten championship rematch in the finals here. Moving on to 184, we had Parker Keckeisen earning a decision over Munez of Oregon State, and on the bottom half, you actually had Aaron Brooks pulling the decision against Trent Hidley 6-3. I'll be honest, I was a bit disappointed in that semifinals. While I'm a Penn Stater, I was rooting for Trent. I was really thinking maybe this is his year. And while he had 2 great matches against him in the national finals 2 years ago, the semifinals last year, Brooks just seemed to be turning it up. He has become one of the greatest scorers on Penn State's team. I think even greater than Strachey, even greater than RBY. And yes, I know I picked against him in my bracket prediction. This is only because I was rooting for Trent, right? Like, am I allowed to have a little bit of like a favorite wrestler? That's Trent. You know, I really love watching him raise the roof and get so excited throughout the season. But Brooks is on the level of some of the top Penn Staters I've seen in history. Bo Nickel, Jason Nolf, David Taylor, Ed Ruth. He is on that level. And the fact that he still has another year, like if he wins this year, he could become Penn State's first 4-timer next year. Also, depending on what Carter Sirachi does, right? Like it is kind of a back and forth there. And at 197, Nino Bonacorsi made the finals. And while I had an inkling like Dean may be able to make the finals, he did lose early on to Silas Allred, who Bonacorsi then beat as the number 1 seed. And then he beat Ethan Laird in the semis by a 10-4 decision. And I am so happy about this. Nino Bonacorsi, who made the national finals a couple years ago, had struggled in high school. I don't know if he actually even ended up winning a high school state title, just because he had always struggled on that stage. But now, finally, on the national stage, he is looking so dominant. And I had the chance to speak to him at the beginning of the season about, like, everything that he had going on. His social media blackout, his like focusing on just wrestling after his losses last year, after not making the stand last year. He was so overpowered by emotion after finding out that he made the stand, winning the quarterfinals, that I don't know if Tanner Sloan's going to be able to beat him. Now, granted, Tanner Sloan has had an impressive tournament, right? I mean, he's headed for the finals, and not only did he beat Rocky Elam in the semifinals, the number 3 seed, who was my pick not only from the beginning of this tournament, but from the beginning of the season, Rocky Elam of Mizzou. But Tanner Sloan of South Dakota State beat Bernie Truout of Cal Poly in the quarterfinals. He beat Cardenas of Cornell in the second round. I mean, he has had quite the tournament throughout this entire thing, and he's been kind of like the underdog. I mean, he's the number 7 seed, so it's not that big of like an underdog story, but it's more of the fact that like I don't think he gets a lot of the coverage as some of these other guys do at 197, like the Ninos, like the Max Dean, obviously, and in the day, AJ Ferrari, Jacob Warner just being an Iowa guy. He just didn't get that coverage, and now making the national finals is fantastic. I think he's the first South Dakota State guy to do it since Seth Gross, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but then we got to the heavyweight bout with what happened here? Mason Paris tacked Anthony Cassiope of Iowa. Like, quick, man. In the beginning of the 3rd period, 16-1 tech fall. Annihilated him. I was expecting Cassiope to put up a match, but he did not. Paris is looking dominant, and I don't know if Greg Kirkfleet is going to have anything to fire off against him, because Kirkfleet ended up beating Wyatt Hendrickson of Air Force in the semis by a 4-2 decision. He seemed calm, cool, and collected after that win, but he didn't seem to be nearly on pace with what Mason Paris was putting out. I mean, it was absolutely unreal. These are your finals picks. And while I know Spencer Lee lost, he still can get his 100th win. And we're trying to gain 1,000 extra subscribers on this channel before Spencer Lee gets his 100th win. We can do it, but you got to hit subscribe right now. It is free to do. Over 700 of you did it yesterday, so we just need a few hundred of you extra to do that right now. It is free to do, takes just a couple seconds, and it seriously helps this channel. If there's something that you've gained from this channel over the last week, over the last year, over the last couple of years, hitting subscribe actually helps out a lot. And if you wanted to watch the next video about the top underdogs who ended up winning national titles, I will have that linked up for you right here, and the subscribe button is also right here.